Charlie, have you had a good week co-hosting Art School Live? Absolutely, Eric. It's been a blast. I've got to chat to some really great artists. I've got to see them paint. It's been an honor to stand in for you. Don't worry, I'll remove my name fairly soon, but I'm holding on to that one. Yeah, it's been a blast. And what's going to happen today? Who you got on? Well, Eric, today I've saved a real cracker for last. Today, we've got Jessie Winchester Schmidt, who's going to be coming on. Now, a lot of you might not know Jessie because Jessie he's a Canadian. He's up here in Canada with me. But Jessie, he works in animation, and that's his primary gig. But as most people who work in animation seem to be able to do, well, sorry, let me start that again. As most people who work in animation can do, they can really develop narratives very, very quickly. Jessie is an absolute master of taking a simple statement and conveying it in really beautiful, vibrant colors in gouache. And you'll see some of the pieces that are up on the screen now. You can see more of them at his Instagram, which is 𝗪𝗏_Art, or at his website, which is, let me get that, 𝗪𝗏_Art.ca. And Jessie is a complete legend when it comes to going outside in -20. I've been known to be dragged out by him to go and see these scenes and convey them in oil, acrylic, in gouache. And he's also a phenomenal digital artist as a result of working in the animation industry. So today, Jessie is with us. Welcome, Jessie. And what are you going to teach for us today?
We are going to supercharge your gouache painting abilities, Charlie Easton.
Right on. And you're going to be doing gouache, and it's going to be vibrant, and we're going to get something done super fast. And you're going to give us some exercises. Is that right?
You got it. We're going to start with a value exercise that is going to gain us value control in gouache because it does dry to a different value, and we're going to get us all over that learning curve. We're going to end with a more advanced little exercise where I'm going to try and give our more advanced painters something to chew on. I'll do my best.
Right on. This is going to be good. So let's get this show rolling.
It's Art School Live with Eric Rose.
Okay, I'm Charlie Easton. I'm standing in for Eric. This is my last day of the week. And as I said at the beginning, we got a good one for you. We've got Jessie Winchester Schmidt, who's coming onto the show, and he's going to teach us about how to paint vibrant gouache paintings. And he's going to give us a couple of exercises. All of the learnings that he's going to teach us about can be applied to whatever medium you work in. So stay tuned, and I think you're going to have a blast. Jessie, I'm just going to save you as much time as I can for you to do your demo. So let's get this thing started. Oh, looks like Jessie may have got a device unconnected there. So while we wait for Jessie to come back, I'll just mention a couple of other things. There's I'm going to be very selfish here. I'm doing a video for Streamline soon, and there is a poll out there to see what you want to paint, what you want to see me paint, and therefore what you want to paint as a result. So I think in the chat, Christy might be able to post a link, and you can go and choose what you would like to see me teach about. And if you haven't had enough of my dorky British accent for the last week, then you can get a little bit more of that when the video gets released next year. Looks like we might have Jessie back. Good, there he is.
Hello, Charlie.
I appreciate that, Jessie. You gave me a couple of minutes to give myself a plug, so thank you.
You're welcome. It's all on purpose, I assure you. No technical issues on my end whatsoever, Charlie.
Jessie has done lots of work for Disney, for DreamWorks. He's taught across North America. So, like, technical stuff, I can imagine you've encountered everything.
Oh, yeah. When things go wrong when you're in front of a live audience, that's the way, and it's all good. Okay, let's jump into it. So gouache, I want you all to have a great time painting with gouache, and I love gouache. It is such a beautiful medium. Here's a gouache painting I did recently. I love the matte appearance. I love the vibrancy of the colors. I love how mobile the medium is. It is so great for getting out in the field and doing quick, small studies. That's kind of its big strength. Now, with all that said, my love affair with gouache also involves some frustration because, as some of you may realize, it dries a different value than what you mix. So we're going to get you over that hump real quick. Right here, I've got a value chart, 5 values. We're going to mix random colors and match those values. Let's go. We're going to start with the hardest one.
Are you mixing straight on a cookie tray?
Heck yeah. Heck yeah, Charlie. Okay, we're going to go right in for the kill. The toughest one here is near white. Now, I know that anything I mix in that range is going to dry darker. So this is almost all white with just a touch of yellow. And just like I do in an actual studio painting, I'm going to test out before I charge in there, build some confidence. That way, by the time my brush hits the in this case, study, little exercise, I've got all the confidence I need. So we're going to start with the hardest one, which is warms near white. Let's do it.
So on your palette there, Jesse, you've got primaries, and it looks like you've got a cool and a warm blue. Is that right?
Yeah, good call. So lemon yellow. This one I can never pronounce. 𝗠𝗶𝗯𝗿 red. Oh. It's quite a saturated red. Our old favorite, 𝗪𝗶𝗯𝗿 blue, phthalo blue for some really saturated high key blue if I need it. And then our guest star today is cobalt turquoise, just to mix things up.
Beautiful.
Okay, so I've got a couple of bright warms in there. Let's try, let's go for a little bit more orange here. So with the yellow, I can get quite a bit of chroma in there in this high key. So that's really, really nice. And let's swap over to some cools. Jump right into that phthalo. So what I love about doing this is taking myself out of trying to make a beautiful picture. That's fun too, but if that's all I'm doing as an artist, it's easy to get stressed out. And if I alleviate myself from that expectation and I'm just spending time getting to know my medium and exercising the principles that will set me up for great painting, I'm doing myself a huge favor. And that's something I hope everyone takes away from this. So that orange is a little dark, isn't it? Another great thing about this exercise is you don't need anyone to tell you if you're accurate or not. You can take a photo of what you've done and change it to grayscale and evaluate how close to those value swatches are you getting with these colors.
So you've put 5 steps down the left-hand side, and then you're trying to mix warms and cools for each of the steps.
You got it. Yeah, so if I'm doing my job right, all these colors are exactly the same value as the value next to them. That blue sure is a lot darker.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try that one again. I did start with the hardest one on purpose. Get the brain going first thing in the morning. Okay, and let's jump down to the hardest one, and then we'll move on to a little bit more exciting of a painting. So down on the dark end of the scale, I want to get all the white out of my brush. I love the idea of artists training like athletes. And if you think about the ratio of game day to practice, I think athletes get that right.
Mm-hmm.
For every game of basketball that an NBA player plays, they've done, you know, tens of hours of drills and practice. They're not just playing basketball, they're practicing their three-pointers, they're running drills, they're practicing their defense.
Mm-hmm.
I really think there's a lot of advantage to artists training like that as well, and making sure that there's time in our schedule to practice the fundamentals that go into our game day, which for us is creating finished pieces.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's so many different variables when it comes to doing a painting that you're just limiting some of them.
That's exactly it. Yeah, and that's psychologically that plays into chunking. We're taking a complex task, making a narrative painting that captivates our audience and breaking it down into manageable components. In this case, value control, which I'm not sure there's anything more important than that in making a captivating, compelling image.
Mm-hmm.
Let's try a dark green. How dark can we get a green? We need to warm that green up. There we go. That red brought that green right down. Okay, so I'm not going to do too much more of this. It's now on each of you to carve out 10 minutes a day to do this. And if you are interested at getting great at gouache quickly, I promise you, 10 minutes of this a day, throw in some master studies as well, where you're doing little sketches of master artwork in gouache. If you combine those two and do that every day, you'll get good quick, I promise you.
That's a great little tip there, Jesse. I love the way that you've set that up, and it's a little bit freer than working specifically to a color wheel.
Absolutely.
Okay, so you got this beautiful scene here. That looks like, is it Sea to Sky Highway?
You got it, buddy.
So the Sea to Sky Highway runs from Vancouver up to Whistler. It's one of the great roads on this fine continent.
We've been on that highway together, Charlie. I think back on that day very fondly.
So you're going to paint a section of this?
You got it. Okay, so I've got a section of that painting ready to go here. I've started off with a transparent overlay of my red. These aren't the exact values that I want in my final painting, but they are an attempt to capture the value relationships. What I mean by that is the relative values and how the values relate to each other. So the van on the highway is white in local value. It is a white van. However, it's in shadow. So it's nowhere near as bright as, say, the headlights or the snow that is in direct sunlight. So this is setting me up for those value relationships. And the first thing I'm going to do is pick 3 values that I feel are fundamental to making this story work. Before I even start that, I want to be clear as to my intention, clarity of intent. This image is about the awe and the majesty that I experienced driving on that highway. It is about the connection between us in the van and this magnificent mountain in behind us. Interestingly, it's also about a naturally occurring glow and the artificial occurring glow. And there's kind of a dual focal point and a contrasting relationship psychologically between the glow of the mountain and the glow of the headlamps. And if this works, we're going to end up with something where those two are almost competing against each other. Your eyes are kind of bouncing back and forth and In the final composition, I've tried to balance that out with the highway sign here to keep your eye moving around. So with that in mind, our clarity of intent has been defined. I'm going to jump into establishing 3 values, and I'm going to go for the cliff and the tree, which are the same value. Right away, I'm thinking in groups, so it's not individual objects, but groups of value, which include multiple objects. So this shape, the road, and the mountain. If I can get those 3 values working in relationship to each other, I'm setting myself up for a win and for smooth sailing ahead. And once I have those blocked in, we'll look at something super fun, which is creating color vibrancy into those established values. Okay,
Fantastic.
so let's mix what's going to end up being quite dark, starting with the cliff. Sort of a dark purple. The mountain will be sort of a mid-purple, and the road will be a little bit lighter than the cliff and the least saturated. So along with value, I'm starting to think about temperature relationships as well. And if in my mind, all 3 of those elements, those shapes, the cliff, the mountain, and the road, if I'm clear on the value and the temperature and the chroma of each, then I'm setting myself up for a win here. So that's looking pretty good to me for the cliff. Basically a dark purple. So the road, I want to be just a touch brighter than that and quite a bit less saturated. We've got a more neutral local value in the concrete, the tarmac. And we've got the cool sky fill light. So of course that upward facing surface is reflecting the sky color, which is cooling it off even further. So I'm mixing all 3 of the primaries in here to make sure that's nice and neutral. So I want the value here to be darker than the cliff, but not as bright. Or sorry, lighter than the cliff, but not as bright as the mountain. I'll mix that one next. So before I'm even touching the painting itself, I'm evaluating these relationships on the palette while all 3 are still wet. That way I'm comparing wet gouache to wet gouache. If I'm going to compare wet gouache to dry gouache, things can get pretty tricky.
Interesting.
Okay. So you can see the value of these 2 pools is closer together, and then we've got a bit of a jump when we get to the mountain value here. A lot of purple overall because this is a sunrise scene. The key light, the sun, is saturated, and so that temperature of lighting, the warmth of the lighting illuminating the entire scene, is affecting all of my colors. In other words, there's going to be a bit of purple in pretty well everything. Okay, so as much as I want to charge into this painting, I'm going to use my little practice sheet here and just double check by putting these colors right up against each other. And I can see right away that my tarmac is a little too dark. So it's nice to adjust that before I get into the actual painting. There's always surprises here, and it's nice to get them out of the way. That's feeling better. It's surprising. Okay, so I can see here the tarmac versus the cliff is right about in the pocket. That means probably my mountain value is a little dark. And I promise once we get these 3 values locked in, we're going to start having a lot more fun playing around with color.
Oh, I could watch you mix paint all day, Jesse.
You know, I'm starting to believe that a lot of the good work I hope for is done on the palette.
Hmm. And of course, because the gouache is semi-transparent, you're going to have some of the red in your value underpainting poking through.
You got it. Yes. Yes, Charlie. Yes. And after we block in these shapes, that paint will come through in the color vibrancy that I lay in top. So we're using the transparency of the medium to our advantage for sure. Okay, let's be brave. Let's charge in.
I just ask Jesse, you're just on watercolor paper, right? White watercolor paper.
Yeah. This is 140-pound cotton paper. It's a dream to work with. I'm going to intentionally undermix the paint a little bit here, meaning I want a little bit of random color that hasn't been mixed in there. That's going to give me some variation within the brushstroke. Okay. Nice and dark.
You're getting lots of good comments about your mixing here, Jesse. It seems like, you know, you could create the equivalent of the fire log channel. Just have Jesse mixes.
Is it therapeutic to watch?
It is.
I love it.
It's great. I could start every day with this.
We're having a mixing party, everyone. You know, I've noticed sometimes, and it is embarrassing to admit, but there's something to this. I've spent an hour or two on a painting only to look down at my palette and go, you know, I kind of prefer the palette. And there is beauty to the abstraction and the freeness that is occurring over here. And what that encourages me to do is to bring some of that into my paintings themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. So we're back in the road color there, is it?
You got it. Yeah, that nice neutral. So all three primaries. Slightly lighter than the cliff. Add a little bit of a cheeky gradation here as the tarmac rounds the corner under this cliff. We're getting some of that cliff blocking the key light in the scene. So I'm thinking about broad shapes here, but I am also thinking about some subtlety. I'm sort of anticipating some of the gradients that I know will add to the sense of luminosity of this scene. But for the most part, really trying to just block in big shapes of color and value here and not get pulled into detail. Detail will come next.
Getting a few questions from people asking about the advantages of painting with gouache over acrylics, and I'll let you answer that, 𝗠𝗫𝗃. But I'd also say that, you know, I think often the way that you paint in gouache, it looks like there are quite a lot of similarities.
Yeah, for sure. Pros and cons to every medium. Try them all, see what works for you. What I love about gouache, its strengths are its versatility, its portability. So by versatility, I mean that you can paint transparent. This is gouache, and it's acting more like watercolor.
Right.
And you can paint more opaque. This is more like acrylic. So I have that flexibility, and being able to leverage both of those is advantageous for sure. And it's also very portable. I tend to work small with gouache. It's great that you can throw it in a backpack and show up and be painting pretty quickly.
And there's those little tubes of gouache. It got such a high pigment load.
Yes.
You know, acrylic has a lot of binder and other stuff in it, and so you're taking around big tubes, as you say. It's far more portable. If anyone's interested, earlier this week we did a show with 𝗪𝗶𝗯𝗿, who is another animator, illustrator, and she used the gouache in a far more fluid, bloomy, kind of watercolory style. 𝗠𝗫𝗃's, you can see your brush is loaded with paint, and it's painting more in an opaque fashion right now.
Indeed. Big fan of Laura. She is incredible. A bit of a hero of mine. I've worked with her on a couple projects, I think, and she's amazing.
Yeah, so you'll find that, folks, on Eric's Facebook page and also on the Art School Live YouTube site. That's a good demo. Okay, so you're getting most of the road in, and you've got a good amount of the trees. You're keeping those values separate, but they're still in a kind of a condensed value range.
Got it. Okay, let's get in the mountain. So this will be a larger value jump than between the cliff and the road. Quite saturated.
And your road is still wet, so as you're applying this, you're still able to perceive the same value jumps between the two.
That's right.
And then they'll all dry probably a little darker together. Is that the assumption?
Yeah, the lights will dry darker, the darks will dry lighter. So the cliff is going to dry a little bit lighter. It'll all kind of compress towards the center, which an advantage or something that we can use to help us there is gouache wants to push all the values towards the center. So if I know that going in, I can reserve the darkest darks and the brightest brights, which is good strategy, right? Sargent did that, leaving the highlights right to the end typically. And so there's sort of a garnish to the structure of the painting. You're not going to get into too high of contrast right out of the gate. Now, the risk is that we end up with something that is lacking value punch or diversity. But that is where this approach comes in establishing the intended relationships right out of the gate.
And then it's allowing you the power to then go and put it in at a later date.
You got it.
And you're preserving the white of the paper as well in some of those key areas of luminosity.
That's right. Yeah, where the sunlight is hitting the snow is going to be my brightest bright, and it needs to be really warm, which is tricky if there's any mud or cool color in my brush or water. That will taint this bright warm. So keeping it white is setting me up to keep that color as clean as possible.
Great. Just so you know, Jesse, we got about 15 minutes left.
Okay, so I will jump into creating some color vibrancy here within the values that we've established. So this will harken back to that first exercise we did. So hopefully you can see the cross-pollination there and see how that might offer you some great strategy in your own work. So now that I've got these sort of 3 areas blocked in, we're going to go back into those shapes and add some more color with a couple ideas in mind. And those ideas would be sky fill. So surfaces that are facing upwards, we can cool, and bounce light, surfaces that are pointed towards light sources, we can warm, and light spill, surfaces that are right next to light sources like the headlights, we can have that color spill into it. So let's start with sky fill. Sky fill on the cliff is going to occur when the rock surface is angling towards the sky and that cool light is reflecting. We're going to go super saturated here and almost the same value as the cliff. I have that cliff value right here, so I'm testing the sky fill value against that. It needs to be just a touch lighter and a lot more saturated. So it's almost pure color here. And we're just going to charge in and visualize those surfaces that are pointing upwards. And as that dries, it's going to settle into the value that is underneath it because of the transparency. So it's going to help group those values naturally while bringing in a ton of color vibrancy. And color vibrancy is such a striking characteristic that occurs when you have alternating temperatures or different colors that are similar value. So I'm going to jump to bounce light now on the cliff, and we'll see exactly what I mean by color vibrancy. So now
you guys are getting a masterclass here from Jesse. This is great. I've painted with Jesse many times, but I've never got to look over his shoulder. And I've always come back to his paintings and gone, man, your value range is so condensed, and yet you're still getting the vibrancy. So this is great to see.
So this red is very similar in value to the cliff and a lot warmer, very saturated. So now we have the same value in the same shape relatively, but we have a huge jump in temperature. We're going from screaming hot to icy cold. If those were very different in value, it would be too fragmented and it would break the overall story that I'm telling here. But the underlying value structure, the value grouping, is what holds the image together, tells the story, directs the eye, and then within that structure, we have the vibrancy to offer our audience playfulness.
I love it. Yeah, if you're able to keep that reference on screen, I think that would be that'd be super useful.
You got it.
Yeah, just for people watching, Jesse's talking about sky fill. Other people may talk about that in terms of atmospheric light. So light that's coming from the sky, but not from the sun. So it's often on a beautiful blue sky day, it's a blue fill. If you might have a gray day, it might be less obvious, but it will be, you know, a more neutral, desaturated color that fills into the back.
That's exactly it. Yeah, so key light here is our sun, which is behind the cliff on the left. It is low in the sky and very saturated. It's not neutral. It's quite warm. That's our key light. And then we've got a quite influential fill light, as you mentioned, the sky, not the sun. And so any surfaces, particularly surfaces in shadow, like the one I'm painting right now, the contact shadow and the cast shadow of the van is facing upwards, and the sky is influencing both that value and temperature. As the shadow moves away from the van, right under the van, the shadow is blocked from the sky. So we have a really strong dark. And as it moves away from the van, we're going to cool that shadow off quite a bit as the fill light saturates that shadow. And the last thing I'm going to attempt to block in here is the van. And this will hopefully drive home a point about value relationships. Again, going back to the idea that the van is indeed white, but if the value of the van is anywhere near the value of the headlamps, then the illusion of that luminosity will be broken.
And this is where those exercises you were telling us at the beginning really come in handy.
That's exactly it. You can see how they correlate, how that is setting me up for this. Exercising those principles in the abstract form takes the pressure off and builds that muscle in both my brain and my hands, so that when it comes to game day, I'm ready to score some goals.
Mm-hmm.
So similar to the cliff, I'm trying to block in as a big shape, and then we'll go back in and add some color vibrancy. Upward facing, cool. So the very top of this van, top facing surfaces, cooler, slightly brighter. We're kind of sculpting the form now with color temperature. And then let's get in some bounce light. Or in this case, let's do some spill light. So where the, here, let's put shadow under the van, the underside, where the headlamps are right next to that really dark shadow under the van, where they transition, the warmth of the headlamp can spill into the darkest darks. And right on that transition, we're going to get a lot of saturation that helps to transition in a way that feels luminous, because the temperature of the headlamp is affecting the shadows around it. So you can see here just a suggestion of really saturated red right on the edge of the highlights from the headlamps. And so we're allowing the temperature of lighting to bounce and interact with our value structure. And that offers color vibrancy.
And you're obviously demoing in gouache, but all of these principles you're talking about apply to any medium. It's just how you interact with what you're seeing.
Absolutely. I'm such a big fan of thinking about principles, fundamentals, and those are absolutely universal, whether it's oil or gouache or painting or filmmaking. We're using value and shape and color temperature to direct the eye and share feelings with our audience.
I think one of the other great things about this is showing how considered, and people are noticing this in the comments, how considered your actions are, because it's sometimes tempting, and you know I'm guilty of this. You see something and you go, oh, I got to paint that, and oh, that's super bright, and you smash it in, but it has to serve the greater good of the painting.
Yeah, absolutely. And I do think there's a time and place for spontaneity. And when I plein air paint, I charge in. And when it goes well, I end up with a lot of spontaneity in my work that is an honest depiction of what I'm feeling and what's in front of me. But I'd say about 50% of the time, my spontaneity and my charging in doesn't end up working. And those are opportunities for me to reflect and part of the adventure and part of what I love about plein air painting. I think both are good, both spontaneity and planning. Right. When it comes to a final piece that you want to show in a gallery or I'm submitting to Disney, you know, I need that reassurance. So the spontaneous plein air studies have been there to fill my creativity with a library of interest. What does a sunset look like? How does bounce light work? And then when it comes to game day, I know how to set myself up to make sure that the intention is there in the final piece.
Great. Hey, Jesse, we've just got a few more minutes, I'm afraid. I think everyone could watch you paint all day. Well, I'll watch you mix paint all day, but just a couple more minutes, I'm afraid, my friend.
Love it. Charlie, it's so nice to hang out with you. I do look forward to the day when we can get out painting together again.
It'll happen.
I hear in Comox, where I've moved, there's a herring run in the spring that brings a lot of orcas into the bay here. I'm thrilled to get out and paint.
Yeah. Great. So you're going in with just a few details around the road, just indicating direction.
You got it. Yeah, some of those divider lines really help to lead the eye in and reinforce some perspective.
Oh, look at this, guys. As Jesse is taking away the luminosity in those dividing barriers, look how much it gets emphasized into the headlights. You know, really hold your power.
Yeah, we don't want any values to be anywhere near those headlamps, and that's where the believable sense of luminosity comes from. There's a big jump in value. So this painting really lives in here. There's nothing really, there's very little that is in here, and then there's a big jump to the headlamps and the lit snow.
Yeah.
And that creates the contrast that directs the eye to those places. and reinforces the sense of luminosity. That occurs so often in nature. When we squint down, the sky is so much brighter than even white surfaces in our scene, unless they're reflecting that light source directly.
Absolutely. Great. Well, Jesse, I think I'm afraid we're going to have to cut you off, but are you going to carry on painting on this at some point? Are you going to be able to post it to your Instagram and we can all check it out there?
Oh, probably not. I think next, this will go in the garbage, and I'll probably try and paint this large in oil and see how I do there. But yeah, this one goes in the garbage, and I want to say that because that's part of the process, and like having fun and splashing paint and doing exercises like this, where it's not intended to go on a gallery wall or to be shown to a client, is something that has really helped me get to a place where I can do this more easily.
Yeah, great. Well, I think that study that you've got there on screen, that is on your Instagram, which is at @j_winchester_art. So everyone go and check out that Instagram handle. Thank you so much, Jesse, for coming on. The comments that we've been receiving are just so positive. It looks like everyone's had a really great time learning a ton from you. So thank you for demoing for us today.
My pleasure, Charlie Easton. You are a gentleman and an incredible artist. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, Jesse. And yeah, I'm Charlie Easton. I've been standing in for Eric. If you want to see my work, go to charlieeaston.com or @CharlieEaston on Instagram. Just a couple of announcements to make at the end of my week of standing in for Eric, which has been an absolute joy. So thank you, Eric, for sharing your platform and allowing us artists to come on and have a go and see if we can do what you do, which is always going to be tricky because you do it so well. But Eric's got a gift for you. We have got a gift for you. Come and download the free ebook, which is 97 Incredible Art Secrets. That's at 97artsecrets.com/ASL. We've got a really great hour-long conversation with Cami Mendlick, 𝗂𝗶𝗁𝗿, and the host, Carrie Stober from Streamline, on how to find your authentic voice and growing your art career. That's happening on Wednesday, October 16th at 2 p.m. So reserve your spot by going to streamlineartevents.com/roundtable. I've already mentioned to you at the beginning about acrylic live. Actually, sorry, I've mentioned to you about my Streamline video that's coming up. But one other thing that I'm involved with Streamline, which I'm really excited about, is acrylic live. That's going to be happening from March 25th to 28th, and it's going to be only people painting in acrylic, which is the medium that I mostly paint in. We got a great lineup of artists. We got Mike Hernandez, who comes from the same tradition as Jesse, who you've seen painted today. Mike is another animator, is a bit of a legend in that world. We've got fine artists, Carla Bosch, Anne Blair Brown. We've got all sorts of people, Kevin McPherson, myself. We've got Amy Erickson, tons of other people, and that's going to be great. That's all based online. So wherever you are in the world, you can tune into acryliclive.com and yeah, go and reserve your spot today. What else have I got to say? Oh yeah, obviously make sure you subscribe to this channel at Art School Live on YouTube and at Eric Rhodes on Instagram. Don't forget to follow Jesse on Instagram at @j_winchester_art. And yeah, I really appreciate you guys coming to this platform this week. I've really enjoyed it. Next week, Carrie Stober is coming back as your guest host. As I said at the beginning, Eric is he's currently with 𝗨𝗶𝗯𝗿 doing some jurying with them, and so he's getting his fill of art there. And I hope you guys have had your fill of art this week with some guests that I've been thrilled to invite. So thank you so much for attending. Thanks so much for participating in all the comments. I hope you get to rewatch some of the videos, and hopefully our paths will cross again soon. Thanks very much.